bring on my friend, Dr. Roseann Capanna. She's an expert in children's mental health and integrative therapies. She is a co-author of a book called Brain Under Attack, and it's a resource guide for parents who have children with autoimmune encephalitis, often known as pandas and pans. She's helped a gazillion, she says thousands, I just call them a gazillion kids and young adults with learning disabilities, post-concussive syndrome, ADHD, Lyme disease, and other issues stemming from pans and pandas and all sorts of other stuff. She's really amazing. Like, you know, she's got my back, and it is so amazing to just have a friend who is just 100,000% dedicated to the kids. So, Roseann, I'm super excited to have you here. How's things going?
Well, thank you for that awesome intro. You know I love you back. So thank you. Dr. Chan and I do killer collaborations. So we always have a good time too, no matter what is going on, and we try to give a lot of love. So, you know, what's going on is, you know, obviously we're all in quarantine, and just a lot of questions about everything related to parenting and structuring home learning and structuring their own work, and just a lot of tangles that keep getting, there's more and more tangles, but on the flip side, I'm also hearing a lot of really awesome things that families and parents are doing. So, you know, they're kind of embracing this time in some ways the best they can.
Yeah, you know, I really want to start with what's going on at home, because I think one of the things that's really so cool about everybody who's joining us this week is, you know, we're family members, we're moms, we're dads, we have kids, we have parents, and I think that there's no better way to know how to get through this. And we're all healthcare professionals, right? We give all this information to people. This is how you should do it. But what about what's it like in reality? So what's the reality at your house? And then we can talk about how to help other people.
Let's talk about the reality right now, that I'm at home instead of work, and I had to like go to my teenager, go to my 9-year-old, go to my husband and let them know that I was going to be live, and this isn't abnormal for them per se. But, you know, I of course set the room up, and, you know, the cat tried to just break in. So, you know, and I'm sharing this with you because I want you all to chuckle. Who else is experiencing this right now? You know, so the reality is we're all trying to get through this together, and it's not always easy, right? So, you know, we have to be mindful. We have to think about what do we need. So, you know, with today, before I left this morning, I was like, I'll be back at this time and let people know. And you know, why did I do that? Communication is really important. So I think these are new times of communication. We're used to living very structured lives, and we don't feel like we have structure, but that you can always put structure in your life, and I really encourage that. So, you know, right now, like I said, this is a little different that I would be doing this at 8 o'clock. Normally I would just stay at the office till whatever time it was done, because, you know, I like it. Right. I like that structure, but things are a little different, and that's okay. You have to go with it. You have to forgive yourself. Parents are feeling guilty. Like I had a mom, we're doing a Facebook group for parents right now called the Chill Challenge. And I had a mom message me and tell me she was feeling guilty that her kids are doing more screen time than normal. And so, you know, right? So let's talk about that, right? Because I think that's one of the things people are feeling bad for. First of all, if you're a provider and you need your job, you're going to do what you got to do to get through it.
Right. I mean, this is a conversation Jill and I had today. It was just like, our daughter's home and her school's been really good, but they need some self-directed learning time as well as the time where they're with the teacher virtually. But like this week, they're on vacation, but we're not on vacation. So yeah, and she's getting a little more screen time than maybe we would like. But I think this is a theme we talked about last night with food and exercise and family. And I love that you brought it up right away, is we need to cut ourselves a little bit of a break. and be flexible in this time.
Yeah. And it all starts with communication. So whatever your expectations are, you need to be clear as a parent with your kids. And you can't just say, just like the person, we have somebody in our house, my nephew, who will walk past garbage and doesn't see it. Got to be one of the best kids in the whole planet.
Right.
He doesn't see it. But if I ask him to do it, he'd be like, of course. And he's so fantastic. So I always use this extreme examples because we want to really think about we're all together and we're going to get on each other's nerves. We
Right.
are. This is what it is. So laying out what you expect realistically, and then negotiating, particularly with older kids, negotiating with them, but just being really clear cut. Like, so, outside of my door at work, it's like, you can't knock on this door. I said to my little guy who's been coming to work and doing homeschooling at work through Zoom, and I put a little thing on the door that said, if you need me, this is your alternative, right? How much more clear cut? And he's the kind of kid that can be self-directed and do that. And I think it just prevents a lot of stress on the parent who's like, oh my gosh, I'm on this call with my boss.
Right.
What do I do? Being really clear is helpful, and practicing, like we said, Tom, some forgiveness. Like, so, Talia had she caught a couple extra movies last week, so
It
here's some
happens.
it happens. So here's some creative things that people are doing. Like, have a movie, then say, like, try to watch, there's lists of educational movies, movies that have a theme, then say afterwards, I'm going to talk to you about like the challenges the character had. If you're really that concerned about whether the movie is going to, ruin them because, they get an extra 10 hours of screen time that week, I'm going to tell you they're going to be okay. But you also can do alternative things, right? So like every museum is online. You want to negotiate in advance and say, well, before you get onto Minecraft, you need to do X, Y, and Z, right? We don't pay our employees before they do the work. It's the same thing with our kids. It's
Right.
just we need to be a little more flexible during this time, right, Tom?
And I think that the clarity too, I agree with the flexibility, but the clarity, I mean, it's something that is so important is you lay out the expectation ahead of time and you have some flexibility and I think that one of the things as parents is we have such a great influence over our kids. When we're doing all of this, we also, you're gonna also need to be able to say, this is what I'm doing, and I also need some flexibility too, And if you're asking for flexibility, give them a little bit of flexibility. Like with Talia, they had what the heck is it called? One of the local historical places, they're doing this big project now. And so she got her whole school involved because she's really into it. And so now as part of school, she's been working on this project with them. And I think it's just really awesome for them to be able to take ownership. And another example that I gave the last time we did one of these chats together was, Talia watched Shark Tank, right? Because I'm like, we fast forward through it. So it's like 42 minutes. But then I said, okay, she watched one and got excited because somebody had created this like online where you get your own designer, after you fill out some questions. So I said, okay, here's your project. You can have extra screen time, but now you have to go figure out, is that more cost effective than if you had to hire somebody and then pick out the clothes yourself? And she did a whole project around it. So we got kind of creative. So I really love that
Yeah.
flexibility and creativity.
And here's the thing, what you need to do with a kid is just like what a teacher would do, is that you show them something, right? I'm a big fan, I don't think we talked about this last time, I'm a big fan of something called lap books. So I'm a former homeschooler, so I know all about this stuff. You can Google lap books. And basically, they do research on a topic. You ask your kid, like, what do you want to do a topic on? Okay, you want to do it on space. right? Or space exploration or something really specific. I mean, we do this really with any age. We do this with our vacations because the Hodges like to take off previously.
Right.
Go off on vacations out of school time. So we would do lap books in this place. And they go real deep into a topic. They, every possible thing, and they put it in this lap book, and it's really pretty cool. So as a teacher, you set a child up, you show them what to do, and then you let them go, right? So and so I love that you did that with Talia. She got inspired by her school, and this is beneficial for the kids. We want to really be mindful that pretty much every school is not going back until September. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. New York State is, I think, the first state to say that. And, so we want to make sure we're not having regression, and that means being active. And, what kids need to do is reading, writing, and math. For your younger kids, your older kids need to think about what they need to do for the next year. And this comes through conversation, like letting your kids know. Obviously, when your kid has special needs, there's questions about pans and pandas. When I think about my own child with pans and pandas, here's the good news about quarantine. We're not bringing anything home to him, and he's much less likely to get sick. So, but we always, as all of us PANS moms are talking about in the threads, is that we always are worried about getting sick. This quarantine component, yes, it's something different, but it is a worry that we always have, whether, whatever infectious disease is impacting the nervous system. But, in terms of parenting, you have to be flexible, you have to communicate, set up in advance, and you have to be present, right? So I think the other thing that I'm really hearing about is that we're all getting, contacted constantly through our phones, and everyone wants to have a
Oh my
Zoom
God.
meeting. It's like, I've never worked more. I mean, I work all the time, but this is really pretty intense. So people are like, do you have a minute to talk? And I'm like, I really don't.
Isn't it crazy how busy you get? And I find myself
Yeah.
saying, Talia, I'll be with you in a minute, or I'll be with you in an
Yeah.
hour. And I think one of the tricks is I'm very clear on what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But then I also have to say, whoa, enough is enough. This is family time. So I think routine is really a big deal in here.
Critical. And you need to have a schedule. I've been screaming this since February on TV, but you need to have a schedule, and you have to stick to it, and you got to get up and move around. Like, so I, have been doing whatever I can. I'm somebody who's pretty religious with working out, as I know Dr. Tom is, and our kids need movement. So even though they're in classes and sitting, they are moving, they're able to get up. And so you really want to encourage that and not have them on their downtime grab their device right away. But again, if that's what you need to do because you have to work a 9-to-5 job, that's okay. The best way to handle that is to talk about it in advance.
Right.
What your rules are really important. This is going to be very interesting educationally, Tom, because we just don't know what's going to happen. There's no exams, there's no benchmarks. Kids can regress educationally as quickly as 2 weeks. So there's a lot of worries, that are somewhat legitimate. But I also want to tell parents that what's important is that, as little as 1 to 2 hours of direct instruction a day is what 6 hours of learning is at school.
Well, right. And I think we're so used to like our model of learning. Whereas if you look at other countries, like say Japan is a great one. I mean, they have so few topics, but they let their kids learn it in all different areas. So, one of the things you're talking about is movement too. And I think it's so important because we were talking last night with Dr. Terry Walls. Actually, all of us were talking about it, but really Terry brought up like not only the food choices, but we have to move. We had this really nice discussion of the lymphatic drainage and keeping ourselves healthy by daily movement. But I remember Brandon Bouchard, who is a high performance coach. He's like kind of at the, sort of on the level of Tony Robbins. He's like every hour you have to take I should say his research actually shows at least every 50 minutes you have to stop and take a break and move around and change up. it could only be for a couple of minutes. And so so we have to we can teach our kids now how to become high performers doing that.
Yeah,
So,
and actually it's children every 20 to 30 minutes is what they need to move. I mean, some kids I really encourage, we all are different learners, so you really want to respect what your kid is telling you and showing you how they learn best. So, physically standing up at the table. I have my computer typically on our kitchen counter, which has a second layer, and I can
right.
just stand when I'm there. I also, of course, have an exercise bike desk. So
Nice. Yeah, I have to
I
standing
highly
desk too.
encourage it. And my kids get on there and do that. But yes, you need to move. And people are asking, about what's the ratio of instruction. So 1 to 2 hours of one-to-one instruction equals 6 hours of instruction a day.
Yeah.
So pretty incredible. But that 1 to 2 hours can be really jam-packed. Again, they're not used to that intensity, and kids can really get through things. Kids with attentional issues that may be longer because they need more breaks in between. They're asking about PANDAS kids. Every PANDAS kid is
That's where I want to go.
right?
So yeah, and I see. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you for Dr. Elisa Song, who's chiming in and helping us with some of this. It's so great to get questions and keeping the conversation going too. But a couple questions, because I know we're gonna dive in this later, especially with Elisa, with PANS and PANDAS, because I think that's a big question. But you and I, we do a lot of work with PANS kids together, and so what are you feeling like with your PANS and PANS kids? What are you seeing in currently in terms of like how serious is the virus for them? What is their experience? And sort of, there's a question about, as far as the overactive immune reaction, because me, I've got a couple of opinions, but I love to hear what your experience is.
I think what my PANS family felt first. So, I'm sorry, somebody's in a flare. So a flare is a worsening of the behaviors, the physical symptoms, everything all at once, and it could be brought on by another illness, stress, a lot of different things. As my friend from Gabriella True says, the wind blowing can bring on a flare for a pair of kids. So I'm really a flare a PANS mom. So what do I want to say? I think initially everybody was so worried about their kids actually getting it. Social distancing is working. Mm-hmm. So I think that is great. And so there has been a lessening of fears. I think what people are realizing is for their kids, so many kids with PANS are at home. And already we're getting homebound instruction or homeschooling, and homebound instruction is when a school system pays for it, and homeschooling is when a parent takes that on. So for people that already had a regular routine, I don't know how much they're noticing a difference, except sometimes the family dynamics could be causing an interference and throwing in the flares. Also, people may not be able to get access to the treatments that they normally get.
I think that's what Sharon's saying, is their son's not able to get his IVIG, and I've had a lot of that. Now, I really love, Elisa made a comment, taking care of our kids' minds and mental health is, in her opinion and mine, the most important way to keep their immune systems healthy and strong. And, I think that we need to model that behavior. And I think that that's why I really wanted to start off like, this whole evening with this mental health discussion, because it really is. I mean, it's body, mind, and spirit. And I mean, what about leading here? Because I mean, like, a lot of kids, like I've talked to a lot of people who have teenagers, and their teenagers are kind of like, and now we're all in the same house. So, I mean, what are you recommending to parents who, when their kids really aren't into it, but how do they keep leading in this time so that we can help their mental health without choking them?
So first of all, I want to say very pleasantly that I know that out there are kids that are like hands up, teenagers are breaking curfews, they're going out, they're connecting with their friends when they're not supposed to, that's why a lot of playgrounds are showing up. But on the flip side, what I'm hearing from a lot of my parents is that they're surprised how willing their teens are able to do things. And, you know, so many of my kids with special needs, including pans and pandas, you know, they're so used to getting support. And when we teach them to connect to their body, to really get in their body, which nobody who's anxious or angry wants to, but when you teach them that, they are much more able to understand what works for them. So they are more likely to say, you know, I need this. You know, I joke around, I have all these tools at home, right? We have biofeedback, we have PMF, we have neurofeedback. And my kids are like, hey, I need a little, you know, I need a little BRT tonight, which is PMF and biofeedback. You know, they know that. So creating the routine, modeling it, but, you know, Elisa's right. It all starts with the mind and regulating the nervous system. Mind, body, and spirit are all connected.
Right.
They are. And so what you can do is to try to support the nervous system. And you can do that at home with tools like breath work. You can Google 578 breath or 360 breathing. There's all different types of breath work. And it's teaching you to breathe through your belly, right? I don't know if any of you, I felt the other day that I noticed for the first time in I don't know how long that I felt myself breathing in my chest. And I was like, I don't breathe in my chest. I'm Dr. Roseann, for crying out loud.
That's right.
So I just was like, I need to do my breath work. I'm not doing it. And it was because I was hunched over a computer and doing all this work and my body got out of whack. And it was really affecting me. I was feeling not like myself, waking up in the middle of the night, not always laughing even at my own jokes. Just kidding. But,
Right.
you know, just felt out of whack. So start with breath work, meditation. You can do heart math, you know, using the blue blocker glasses. All these tools that are designed to regulate your nervous system will help with flares. I mean, that's what I do. I help kids who are struggling by regulating the nervous system, and parents
we had a really cool question. Somebody asked about, like, you know, they've all been isolated for a month, but their 5-year-old with autism and pandas flared up. So, but nobody's sick. So there's a little question about seasonal allergies, which could certainly kick it off. But you mentioned something I want you to kind of round out our conversation with is, you know, because part of the rest of the question is, are we worried the virus came in on some groceries, which honestly, I think is way overblown. I mean, I think that we're exposed to the virus most of the time through respiratory droplets. There might be some others, but getting it on our food, we can have that conversation another time. But you mentioned the word stress. What types of stressors and how does stress play a role in PANS flares, or even just a kid who's, you know, neurotypical A-OK before all this COVID-19?
It's not even kids, it's all of us. So, you know, I always give the example of, you know, this is our nervous system and this is the base, right? The baseline. We're supposed to idle here. But anybody who is activated, who's stressed, who's depressed, their nervous system starts getting into a red high state, okay? And once you're in a higher state, you actually just start responding to everything outside of your control. And when you go offline, it's fight, flight, or freeze. And the basis of this is, you know, we have this nervous system that has a sympathetic state and a parasympathetic state. And once we get into the sympathetic dominant, we get so reactive, right? But there's awesome news. You absolutely can walk this down. I use clinical tools like neurofeedback and biofeedback, things like that. But everybody can do breath work. Everybody can do meditation. You can buy an inexpensive heart math unit. There's lots of other tools. You can do guided visualization, and you can help walk it down. Somebody had an awesome question. How do you get a kid to get back in their body when they don't want to? Right. And it's very protective. People want to flee. They have this uncomfortable feeling. And so for those of you that have anxious kids or even anxious yourself, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You want to survive. You don't want to feel the uncomfortableness. So the best way to do it is actually to, you know, sit on the ground with them. And, you know, you always want to be grounded so they get a base. And practice breath. Start with putting your hand over your heart, do the 5-7-8 breath, teach them belly breathing, and then say things like, where do you notice? Put your hand where you notice the uncomfortableness. And when you do that, they make this connection because they're so disconnected. You will never, as a child, as an adult, move through these things is if you don't connect to the uncomfortableness. If you try to avoid it, all you do is shove it down. But when you actually connect to it, you're able to be alert to it and avoid it, right? So what are actual stressors for our PNs, kids, or anybody else? Us all being two together might be too stressful. Maybe you're eating junk food. I don't know. There's so many things. Maybe there's one person in your family who's really distressed right now and not holding it together. And this is causing some of those flaring things to go on. It could be hormone dysregulation. There's just so many parts to why somebody flares or doesn't. They may be grinding their teeth, and that's creating a cranial issue for them. I mean, there's so many little pieces. That's why having as much as you can and practicing as much self-love as you can for yourself as a parent, and really doing these things as proactively as possible supports the whole family's mental health. And letting, your kids, when they're in fight, flight, or freeze, they're not in control.
Right.
Don't try to talk to them then, talk to them after. And, these kind of kids need a lot of loving limits and, as much hug as you can. So it's a 5-7-8 breath is what I like because it's super easy. So in for 5, hold for 7, out for 8. You do it at least 3 times. Or there's another type of breath called 360 breathing. You can go to my Facebook page. You'll see me talking about a 5-7-8. But
So yeah, and so I'm going to give you some homework if you don't mind, because I know you just said it to everybody. And if you don't mind, maybe you can give me a couple resources and some links to the articles and your Facebook page and stuff, so that when we send out the replay, we'll be able to get. I want to make sure we give everybody those things, and so we can give them links to HeartMath, but all those breathing techniques would be really great.
I will put that all in there. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is really important as we wrap up, because I know we have so many things to do tonight. It's like, and you and I could talk forever. But the one thing that Roseann is talking about with the HeartMath, you can start at home for free by breathing into your chest, right? So you just basically start to breathe, and you feel your chest expanding and contracting, and then you sort of imagine that you're breathing the breath directly into your heart. And then after you do that, then you start to feel that, and then you actually start to think of someone you love, something you love to do, your children, your spouse, whatever, your mom, your dad, your dog, the mountains, whatever really just brings you joy and gratitude, and focus on that. And Roseann, I mean, the gratitude I have for you and everything you do for my family and my patients and the people we work together and children as a whole is just, I mean, you're just a force of nature. So thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom.
I'm happy to be here, and I love you, my friend. And thanks, Dr. Elisa, for posting up, and in her busy time, she's offering tech support on her. Another reason to love her. But thank you. I'm going to stay on. Be well, everybody, and try the best you can, and forgive and love yourself. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, and such important words, because we are guiding our children in all of our actions, not just in what we tell them to do. So they're actually learning probably more from watching us.
Well said, my friend.
Love you. We'll talk soon.
Love you.
Glad you're here.